Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to HK Cheating Stories. We appreciate each and every one of you joining us. Where in the world are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Now, let's get the story started. My name is Jason Miller. For 14 years, I thought I had the perfect life, a loving wife, a beautiful daughter, and a best friend I could trust with anything. I worked hard, provided for my family, and never once questioned the people closest to me. Until one night, I overheard a conversation that shattered everything. Turns out, my wife had been lying to me since the day we said "I do." And my so-called best friend? He had been sleeping with her the entire time. But they made one mistake. They thought I'd never find out. They thought I'd never get revenge. I stood in the doorway, my hands clenched into fists, heart pounding in my chest. The words that left my mouth felt different this time. Final. "I'm done, Lisa. I mean it this time." She barely looked up from the couch, arms crossed. That same smug expression she'd worn for months. "Yeah," she muttered, rolling her eyes. "Don't bother coming back." I wanted to snap back at her. I wanted to yell, to throw something, to demand to know why she had turned into this person, this bitter, cold woman who seemed to hate me more than she ever loved me. But I didn't. Instead, I just stared at her, taking in the sight of the woman I had once thought I'd spend forever with. The woman who had vowed to stand by my side, for better or worse. The woman who, for the past several months, had done nothing but belittle me, cut me down with sharp words, and treat me like an inconvenience in my own home. For 14 years, I had tried. I had endured every jab, every insult. I had swallowed my pride and kept my head down, hoping things would get better. But now, I knew the truth. This wasn't just a rough patch. This wasn't something we could fix. This was the end. I turned on my heel and walked out the door, slamming it shut behind me. The sound echoed through the night, a punctuation mark on the last 14 years of my life. But as I stepped into my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, something gnawed at me. This wasn't just about the fights. This wasn't just about the way she looked at me like I disgusted her. This was about what I had heard 3 nights ago. I hadn't planned to overhear it. Hell, if I'd been just 5 minutes later, I might have never known. It was a Monday night. I had been driving around town, avoiding going home, dreading another fight with Lisa. My stomach rumbled, so I pulled into a small diner on the edge of town. The place was nearly empty, just a few booths occupied. I slid into one and picked up a menu, barely looking at it. Then I heard it. A laugh. A voice I recognized. I froze. "How long you been with her?" The voice was unfamiliar. But the next one? The next voice sent a chill down my spine. Since their wedding night. My stomach turned. My breath caught in my throat. It was Ben. Ben, my best friend. Ben, the man who had stood beside me at the altar, the man who had given the best man speech at our wedding, the man I had trusted more than anyone. His voice was light, casual, like he was talking about a damn football game instead of dropping a nuclear bomb on my entire life. Hell, I even had her that day. And Jason? Poor guy has no clue. The blood in my veins turned to ice. I sat there completely still, unable to breathe, unable to move, while Ben laughed, while he bragged about sleeping with my wife on our wedding day. My mind screamed at me to turn around, to confront him, to grab him by the collar and demand the truth. But I didn't. I stayed frozen in that booth, staring at my hands, at the menu, at nothing as Ben kept talking. Yeah, we still meet up. Every couple of weeks. Jason's so clueless. Something inside me shattered. I had spent 14 years loving a woman who had betrayed me from the very beginning. 14 years raising a daughter who, God help me, I suddenly wasn't sure was even mine. I needed air. I needed to get the hell out of there before I did something that would land me in jail. When the waitress came to take my order, I barely managed to whisper, "Sorry, gotta go." Then I bolted. Now, sitting in my car, staring at the house where I had built my life, where I had been lied to for 14 years, I felt nothing but rage. Not the kind of rage that made you lash out. Not the kind of rage that made you yell and break things. No, this was cold rage. Calculated rage. I wasn't going to scream at Lisa. I wasn't going to beg for an explanation. I wasn't going to fight for something that had never been real in the first place. I was going to end this. Not just the marriage, Everything. Lisa and Ben had no idea what was coming. I took a deep breath, started the car, and pulled away from the house for the last time. Because after tonight, nothing would ever be the same again. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. Instead, I drove aimlessly through the dark streets, headlights cutting through the night, my mind a whirlwind of anger, disbelief, and something I couldn't quite name, grief. Because that's what this was, wasn't it? I wasn't just losing my wife. I wasn't just losing my best friend. I was losing the last 14 years of my life. Years that had been built on a lie. I parked my car outside a 24-hour gas station and just sat there, staring at the steering wheel, trying to breathe, trying to process what I had overheard. Lisa had slept with Ben on our wedding day, and according to him, it hadn't stopped there. They were still meeting, still sneaking around behind my back. For how long? Months? Years? Had our entire marriage been a joke? Then, another thought slithered into my mind, darker than the rest. Emily. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles turning white. I had never questioned it before, never had a reason to. She was my daughter, my little girl. But was she? Ben's words echoed my mind. Since their wedding night, my stomach churned. I thought back to Lisa's pregnancy, the complications, the doctor's visits, the endless worry. The way she cried when Emily was finally born. The way I'd held my daughter for the first time, promising to always protect her. But what if she hadn't been mine to protect? I had to know. I grabbed my phone and opened Lisa's contact info. My thumb hovered over the call button. I could wake her up right now, demand answers, force her to tell me the truth. But then what? She'd lie. She'd twist the story, call me crazy, gaslight me until I doubted my own memories. No, I needed proof, and I knew exactly how to get it. I pulled into my driveway just before 3 a.m. The house was dark, silent. Lisa and Emily were fast asleep. I stepped inside, careful not to make a sound. I could hear Lisa's soft breathing from our bedroom. For a split second, I hesitated. If I found nothing, if I was wrong about all of this. But then I remembered Ben's voice. Since their wedding night, Jason's so clueless. That hesitation vanished. I moved quietly, like a shadow, my pulse hammering in my ears as I grabbed Lisa's phone off the nightstand. Locked, of course, but Lisa was nothing if not predictable. I typed in Emily's birthday. Unlocked. I swallowed hard and opened her messages. Nothing. Her texts with Ben were there, but they were normal, boring, even. No flirty messages, no suggestive emojis, nothing that screamed affair. I checked her emails. Still nothing. I exhaled slowly, staring at the screen. Had I been wrong? Had Ben been lying? Then it hit me. Lisa was careful. She wouldn't risk getting caught by leaving messages on her phone. She would delete them. But she wouldn't delete everything. I switched to her deleted messages. And there it was. A single text buried deep. From Ben. Can't wait to see you next week. Same place. Sent 4 days ago. A cold shiver ran down my spine. She had deleted it, but she hadn't been careful enough. I scrolled further, finding more. Some were vague. Others were crystal clear. I miss you. Last night was amazing. Jason has no clue. I clenched my jaw, so tight it hurt. There was no denying it now. She had been sleeping with him behind my back for years. And Emily, if I wanted the truth about Emily, there was only one way to get it. I put Lisa's phone back where I found it and walked out of the bedroom. My mind already made up. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I needed absolute proof. I headed to the bathroom, grabbed some cotton swabs, and quietly stepped into Emily's room. She was fast asleep, her soft snores filling the silence. For a moment, guilt threatened to creep in. She was just a kid. She had nothing to do with this. But I needed to know. Gently, I swabbed the inside of her cheek. She didn't even stir. I sealed the sample in a plastic bag. Then, I did the same for myself. Tomorrow morning, I'd take the samples to a lab. And if my worst fears were true, Lisa and Ben were about to pay. I barely slept that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Lisa's body just inches away from mine, completely unaware of the war raging inside me. I thought about everything. Our wedding, our vows, the home we had built together. Had any of it been real? Or had I just been the fool who married a liar? By the time the sun started creeping through the curtains, I already had my plan. Lisa thought she was smart. Ben thought I was clueless. They had no idea what was coming. I woke up before my alarm. Not that I had really slept. Lisa stirred beside me, murmuring something incoherent before rolling over. She had no idea, no clue that everything was about to unravel. I got out of bed quietly, grabbed my phone, and checked the plastic bag with the DNA samples. Still there. Still safe. It was time to get answers. By 8 a.m., I was standing outside a small lab on the other side of town, my heart pounding like a war drum. The receptionist barely glanced at me as she took the samples. I filled out the necessary paperwork, using a prepaid Visa card to ensure Lisa wouldn't see anything suspicious on our bank statements. Results will be ready in 3 days, the woman said, slipping the samples into an envelope. 3 days, 72 hours. Every second would be a lifetime. I spent those 3 days going through the motions, playing the role of the clueless husband, while every part of me screamed to confront Lisa. At breakfast, I watched her sip her coffee, casually scrolling through her phone, probably deleting more messages from Ben. At night, I lay beside her in bed, listening to her breathe, wondering how long she had been lying to me. Had she ever felt guilty? Had she ever looked at me and regretted what she had done? Or was I just some idiot she had settled for while still sneaking around with him? Emily was the hardest part. She'd run up to me, smiling, hugging me tight, telling me about school, about her favorite shows, about everything and nothing. And I'd smile back. I'd listen. I'd tell her I loved her, because no matter what the results said, she was still my little girl. And no DNA test would ever change that. On the third day, my phone rang. Unknown number. I already knew who it was. I answered, my voice tight. Yeah. This is Dr. Reynolds from the testing lab. I have your results. I swallowed hard. Go ahead. There was a pause. A hesitation. Then, 5 words that changed everything. You are not the father. The room around me blurred. My ears rang. I barely heard the rest of what he said. The explanation, the details, the science behind it all. All I could focus on was the words repeating in my head. Not the father. Not the father. Lisa's betrayal wasn't just a moment of weakness. It wasn't just some mistake. It was my entire life. 14 years of raising a child I thought was mine. 14 years of trusting a woman who had never been faithful to me. 14 years of being played for a fool. And the worst part? She had let me believe the lie. She had let me love Emily as my own while knowing the truth the entire time. My hands trembled as I ended the call. Then slowly I exhaled. I had my proof. And now, it was time to burn everything to the ground. I didn't confront Lisa that night. I didn't throw the DNA results in her face. No, that would be too easy. Instead, I played the long game. If I lost my temper, if I let my emotions control me, I'd give her time to prepare. Time to twist the story. Time to make herself the victim. So I did the opposite. I acted normal. At dinner, I smiled. I made small talk. I even kissed her goodnight. Because while she thought she still had the upper hand, I was already making moves behind the scenes. The next morning, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to my lawyer. I didn't give details, not yet, but I made it clear I needed to prepare for a potential divorce. I asked about our assets, our home, my business. Could she take half? Could she take everything? His answer was cautious but clear. If you don't act fast, she could ruin you. I had to be careful. I had to protect myself first. The second call was to my accountant. I need to make some financial moves, I told him. Are we talking business or personal? Both. I spent the next week making changes Lisa didn't even notice. I transferred the house into my name only. I moved funds out of joint accounts, making sure she couldn't touch them. I adjusted my business ownership, ensuring that if she tried to claim half in a divorce, there'd be nothing left for her to take. And the best part? She was completely unaware. She still sat across from me at dinner, still sent me text messages about grocery lists and errands, still went about her affair with Ben like nothing had changed. But everything had changed, because I wasn't the clueless husband anymore. I was the man who was about to destroy her world. As I watched Lisa laughing on the phone one evening, probably with Ben, I knew the moment was near. She thought she was safe. She thought she had gotten away with it. But in just a few days, she was going to wake up to a very different reality. She was about to lose everything, and I was going to be the one to take it all away. The countdown had begun. I sat in my office, the envelope resting on my desk like a ticking bomb. The DNA results. For 3 days, I had lived in a fog, pretending everything was normal, playing the part of the devoted husband and father while knowing, deep down, that my life was about to change forever. And now, the truth was sitting in front of me. I stared at the envelope, my hands hovering over it. My heart pounded in my ears, a dull, relentless thud, 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 as if my body was already bracing for impact. I took a deep breath, ripped the seal open, and unfolded the paper inside. My eyes scanned the words. Probability of paternity, 0%. Silence. My mind went blank. There was in black and white. The truth I'd been dreading, the truth I had suspected but hoped, prayed, wasn't real. I wasn't Emily's father. She wasn't mine. The world tilted around me, and for a moment, I felt like I couldn't breathe. I had spent 14 years loving that little girl, raising her, comforting her when she had nightmares, cheering her on at school events, believing she was my daughter. And Lisa? Lisa had known. She had looked me in the eyes, year after year, watching me hold Emily, watching me love her unconditionally, and she had never said a damn word. A cold, sharp rage settled in my chest. It wasn't just betrayal. It was theft. Lisa had stolen my right to know the truth. She had stolen my choice. I gripped the paper so tightly my knuckles turned white. My jaw clenched so hard it ached. I wanted to scream. I wanted to put my fist through the desk, through the wall, through anything that would make this pain physical instead of the unbearable ache in my chest. But I did none of those things. Because losing control wasn't an option. I needed to think. I needed a plan. Lisa and Ben had played me for a fool. They thought I was weak. They thought I would never find out. And even if I did, they assumed I'd be too devastated, too broken, to do anything about it. They were wrong. Very, very wrong. That night, I went home, walked through the front door, and kissed Lisa on the cheek. She smiled. Smiled. Like nothing had changed. Like she hadn't built an entire marriage on a lie. I watched her move around the kitchen, chatting about her day, about some PTA meeting, about what she wanted to do for Emily's birthday next month. And it took everything in me to keep my face neutral, to not let my rage spill out, to not grab the nearest object and shatter this illusion she had created. Instead, I sat down at the dinner table, picked up a fork, and took a bite of the meal she had prepared. "How was work?" she asked casually. "Busy," I said, my voice even. "Lots to do." And it was true. I had a lot to do. Because now, I wasn't just planning to leave Lisa. I was planning to ruin her. The next morning, I met with my lawyer. I placed the DNA results on his desk. He read them, then slowly looked up at me. "You're sure you want to do this?" he asked. I nodded. "I'm done playing the fool." We went over my options, my rights, what Lisa could and couldn't take in a divorce. And then came the real question. "Do you want to fight for custody?" I hesitated. Emily. She wasn't my daughter, not biologically, but she was still the little girl I had raised. She was still mine in every way that mattered. And yet, I couldn't do it. Not now. Not when Lisa would use every dirty trick in the book to turn Emily against me, to make me out to be the villain. I clenched my fists. No, let Lisa have her. My lawyer nodded. That's probably for the best. It'll make the divorce easier. Easier. Nothing about this was easy. But I didn't need easy. I needed justice. Over the next few days, I made my final moves. I closed our joint accounts. I transferred my business into a separate entity Lisa couldn't touch. I changed the locks on my personal office and safe. And I quietly put the house up for sale. Lisa had no idea. She still kissed me goodbye in the mornings, still laughed at stupid TV shows in the evenings, still slept beside me at night, completely unaware that the life she had built was seconds away from collapsing. And then, when everything was in place, when my lawyer had the papers drawn up, when my revenge was airtight, I finally made my move. I walked into the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and looked at Lisa. "We need to talk." She frowned, setting down her phone. "What's wrong?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out the DNA test results. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, I placed them in her lap. She smiled at first until she started reading. And then I got to watch her entire world fall apart. I had been waiting for this moment, and I was going to enjoy every second of it. Lisa's face went pale. She held the DNA results in trembling hands, her eyes darting over the words again and again, as if rereading them would somehow change the truth. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed, watching her unravel. "Jason," she whispered, voice barely audible. I said nothing. I wanted her to sit in the silence. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she had done. She swallowed hard, tried to regain her composure. This doesn't change anything. You're still Emily's father." I let out a bitter chuckle. "Am I?" Her breath hitched. "Jason, please. You love her. You raised her. This doesn't have to mean anything." I tilted my head, studying her. "It meant enough for you to lie about it for 14 years. Tears welled up in her eyes. "I didn't mean. Don't." My voice was cold, sharp. "Don't lie to me again. You knew exactly what you were doing." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. "Good. Let her choke on the truth." I stood up, towering over her. "You should start thinking about where you and Ben are going to live." Her head snapped up. "What?" I smirked. "Did you really think I'd stay? That I'd keep playing house while you sneak around with my best friend?" "Jason, I didn't." "Don't insult me." My voice was eerily calm. "I know everything. You and Ben have been at this since our wedding day." Her face crumbled. "I didn't want to lose you." I laughed. "You lost me the second you slept with him." She wiped at her tears. "You don't have to do this. We can fix this." "Fix it?" I scoffed. "Lisa, I don't want to fix anything. I want to watch your life fall apart the same way you destroyed mine." Her tears turned to anger. "So what? You're just going to throw me and Emily out? You think you could just erase us?" I stepped closer, lowering my voice to a dangerous whisper. "I already have." Lisa didn't know it yet, but the wheels had already been in motion for weeks. By the time she finished reading that DNA test, she had already lost everything. I had been methodical, calculated, and she was about to feel the consequences. The next morning, I met with my lawyer one last time to finalize everything. I had transferred our house into my name only. I had withdrawn all funds from our joint accounts. I had put my business under a separate entity she couldn't touch, and I had already initiated the sale of our home. Lisa had no clue. That night, I came home to find her sitting at the dining table, staring at the DNA test. She looked up at me, eyes red and swollen. "You don't have to do this, Jason." I tossed a manila envelope onto the table. "Divorce papers." Her lips parted in shock. "Sign them." Her hands shook as she reached for the envelope. "You're really doing this?" I leaned forward, placing my hands on the table. "You did this, Lisa." She wiped at her tears. "What about Emily?" I clenched my jaw. That was the only part that hurt. "I'll always love her." My voice wavered slightly, but I steadied myself. "But I won't live a lie anymore." Lisa's breath hitched, but she didn't argue. She knew she had lost. And then, just as I turned to leave, she whispered, "What are you going to do to Ben?" I smirked. "Oh, you'll see." I saved Ben for last. Because his downfall, it was going to be the sweetest. Ben had always relied on me. I gave him business. I made sure he had steady work. I was the reason he had an income at all. And now, I was taking it all away. The next morning, I walked into my dealership, gathered my employees, and made an announcement. We're moving in a different direction. We won't be using Ben for any mechanical work moving forward. A few people exchanged glances. Everyone knew Ben had been my go-to guy for years. But I didn't explain. I didn't know anyone in explanation. Ben showed up later that day, completely unaware. "Hey, Jason, when do you want to start on those new cars?" I smiled. "You're not." His brow furrowed. "What? You're done here, Ben. I won't be needing your services anymore." His mouth opened, then closed. He laughed nervously. "Come on, man. Don't be like that." I stepped closer, my voice dropping. "You think I'm joking?" He swallowed hard. "Look, whatever Lisa told you. I heard it from your own damn mouth." His face drained of color. I tilted my head. "How does it feel, Ben? Knowing your life is about to fall apart." He stammered. "Jason, I need this job, man." I smiled. "I bet you do. Shame you should have thought about that before screwing my wife." His eyes flickered with panic. "You know," I continued, "there aren't many jobs in this town. especially for someone with no credentials. Good luck explaining that to Lisa when she realizes she's stuck with a broke mechanic who can't even pay rent. I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, frozen. It was done. Lisa and Ben had taken everything from me, so I took everything from them. And now I was finally free. Ben was done. Lisa was next. I had taken away everything they had built behind my back. The money, the security, the comfortable life Lisa had lived while keeping her dirty little secret. Ben, now jobless, had no future, no steady paycheck, no way to provide for the family he had unknowingly created. And now it was time to drop the final bomb. I wanted Lisa to feel the weight of her choices, to watch her world collapse, just like mine had when I heard Ben bragging about sleeping with my wife on our wedding day. I wasn't just leaving her. I was making sure she would never recover. I pulled into the driveway of what used to be our home, but in my mind, it was already gone. I had filed the eviction notice. The house was mine. And Lisa? She was just a guest who had overstayed her welcome. I stepped out of my car and walked up the porch. The yard was already starting to look unkempt, the flower beds neglected. Typical. Lisa never did take care of things once she thought they weren't hers to control. I knocked on the door. No response. I knocked again, harder this time. A few seconds later, the door swung open, and standing in front of me was Emily. Her eyes widened in surprise. Dad, my heart clenched. No matter what, she would always be my little girl. Hey, sweetheart, your mom home? She hesitated before stepping back. Yeah, she's in the kitchen. I walked inside, my footsteps slow and deliberate. Lisa was standing at the counter, a cup of coffee in her hands. She turned when she heard me enter, her expression guarded. What are you doing here? I smirked, just making sure everything is in order. Her eyes narrowed. What the hell does that mean? Before I could answer, movement caught my attention. From the hallway, Ben stepped out, barefoot, wearing nothing but a wrinkled t-shirt and sweatpants. For a moment, no one said anything. Then I laughed, loud. Well, the whole family is here. Lisa flinched. Jason, don't. I held up a hand, cutting her off. You've got some nerve, Lisa. Moving him in already? That's fast, even for you. Ben shifted uncomfortably. Look, man, we don't have to do this. Oh, but we do. I turned to Emily, who was still watching from the staircase, her face full of confusion. I took a deep breath. Emily, I want you to listen very carefully, because this concerns you. Lisa's eyes went wide. Jason, don't you dare. I ignored her. You always hated having my last name, right? You said you were embarrassed by it. Emily blinked, unsure how to respond. I didn't mean it like that. I nodded. That's okay. Because guess what? You don't have to have my last name anymore. Silence. Lisa's breathing turned shallow. Emily frowned. What do you mean? I turned to Ben. Why don't you tell her, Ben? Go ahead. Tell her why she should take your last name instead. Ben's face drained of color. Lisa gasped. Jason, stop. But I was already pulling the DNA test results from my pocket, unfolding them slowly, deliberately. I held them out to Emily. Because he's your real father. Everything stopped. Emily stared at me, then at the paper, then at Lisa. Mom. Her voice was barely a whisper. Lisa's face was twisted in horror. It's not what you think. Emily grabbed the paper from my hand, scanning the words. Her face crumbled. Her breathing hitched. You lied to me, she whispered. Lisa reached out. Baby, please, I can explain. But Emily took a step back. Don't touch me. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked at Ben, realization dawning. You knew, didn't you? Ben looked sick. Emily, She didn't let him finish. She threw the DNA test on the floor and ran up the stairs, slamming her door shut behind her. Lisa turned on me, furious. You bastard. How could you do this to her? I smiled. I didn't do this, Lisa. You did. Ben rubbed his face, still in shock. Jesus Christ. I sighed. Speaking of which, Lisa, Ben, I assume you'll need to find a new place soon. Lisa's hands balled into fists. What the hell are you talking about? I pulled another envelope from my pocket and dropped it onto the counter. Eviction notice. Lisa paled. No, you can't. I can. I did. I own this house, Lisa. It was mine before we got married. and you've got 30 days to get the hell out. Ben looked like he was about to pass out. Jason, come on, man, let's talk about this. I turned to him. No, you don't talk anymore. You listen. You took everything from me, my wife, my family, my best friend. Now, I'm taking everything from you. Lisa's lip trembled. What am I supposed to do? I smirked. Ask your new boyfriend. And with that, I walked to the door, stepped outside, and breathed in the cold evening air. Behind me, I heard Lisa start to cry. Ben stood frozen, silent, his entire world crashing down around him. Emily was upstairs, heartbroken. And me? I finally felt free. I drove away from that house without looking back. Lisa's cries, Ben's stunned silence, Emily's bedroom door slamming shut. It was all behind me now. A part of my life that no longer belonged to me. The betrayal, the lies, the years of being played for a fool. I had buried them all the moment I walked out that door. Now, it was their turn to suffer. For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. No tossing and turning. No waking up in the middle of the night, replaying every lie Lisa had ever told me. I had done what needed to be done. And now I was free. The next morning, my phone buzzed with missed calls. Lisa, Emily, and even Ben. I ignored them all. Instead, I made one last call to my lawyer. Time to move forward with the divorce. He sighed, as if he knew this moment was coming. You sure you don't want to negotiate custody? I clenched my jaw. No, Lisa can have Emily. I wasn't abandoning her. I wasn't turning my back on the little girl I had raised. But the truth was, Lisa would poison her against me. She would twist the story, rewrite history, make herself the victim. And Emily? She was too young, too hurt, too angry to see through it. I wasn't going to fight for a relationship that Lisa had already ruined. She had made that choice the moment she let me believe a lie. By the end of the week, Lisa finally caught up to me. She showed up at my office, disheveled, eyes puffy from crying, looking nothing like the smug, confident woman who once had me fooled. She stormed in, ignoring my secretary's protests, and slammed the divorce papers onto my desk. You really won't even talk to me? She snapped, her voice shaking. I leaned back in my chair, completely calm. We're talking now, aren't we? She swallowed hard, struggling to control her emotions. Jason, don't do this. We can fix this. I raised an eyebrow. Fix it. She stepped closer. I made a mistake. I let out a cold chuckle. Lisa, a mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is burning dinner. What you did, that was a choice. Over and over again for 14 years. Her face twisted with guilt. I didn't want to lose you. You lost me the second you slept with Ben. Her breath hitched. It was never about love, Jason. It was something stupid. I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. And yet, you let me believe Emily was mine. Tears welled up in her eyes. I thought she was at first. I really did. But you found out, didn't you? I pressed. And you still kept it from me. Silence. Her lip trembled. I was scared. I scoffed. You weren't scared. You were selfish. She opened her mouth, but I wasn't done. You know what the worst part is, Lisa? I said, my voice low, steady. You stole my choice. You didn't just cheat on me. You made a fool out of me. You let me love a child you knew wasn't mine. Tears spilled down her cheeks. But you do love her. That part hurt. Because it was true. I do, I admitted, voice raw. But I don't love you. And I never will again. Lisa's shoulders slumped, her entire body sagging as if the weight of the truth had finally crushed her. So that's it, she whispered. You just walk away. I exhaled slowly, letting the finality of it sink in. No, Lisa, you did. I expected Ben to come crawling next. I was right. A week after Lisa's failed attempt at reconciliation, Ben showed up at my dealership, looking like hell. No job, no money, no options. I was the last person who could save him, and I had no intention of doing so. Jason, man, we need to talk. I stared at him, unimpressed. We really don't. He sighed, rubbing his face. I screwed up, okay? I was a dumbass. I didn't think it would go this far. I let out a slow, mocking whistle. 14 years of sleeping with my wife, and you just now realized it went too far? He flinched. I lost everything, man. Good. His head snapped up. Jason, come on. You don't have to forgive me, but can't we at least go back to how things were? I laughed. You think I'd ever trust you again? You think I'd let you back into my life after what you did? I got nowhere else to go, he admitted, voice small. I tilted my head. That's not my problem. For years, I had thought Ben was my best friend. Turns out, he was just another liar, another betrayer. And now he was nothing, just like Lisa. I walked past him, heading for my car. Ben called after me. You're really just going to leave me like this? I glanced over my shoulder, smirked, and said the same words Lisa had once spat at me. Don't bother coming back. And then I left, because I had won. It was over. Lisa was gone. Ben was gone. The life I had spent 14 years building had crumbled, but not on top of me. I walked away from the wreckage untouched. And for the first time in a long time, I could finally breathe. For months later, I stood in a courtroom, facing the woman who had lied to me for over a decade. Lisa sat across from me, her expression hollow, as the judge read out the finalization of our divorce. This court finds that the marriage between Jason Miller and Lisa Miller is hereby dissolved, effective immediately. There it was. A simple statement, a few strokes of a pen, and 14 years of my life were legally erased. Lisa didn't even look at me. She didn't fight for anything, not after she saw how well I had planned. The house was sold, the assets divided, but I had left her with nothing substantial. No joint accounts to drain, no alimony to leech off of me. And Emily? She stayed with Lisa, just as I had planned. I knew Lisa would do everything in her power to turn her against me. And for now, I let her. One day, Emily would grow up. She would start asking questions. She would figure out the truth on her own. And when that day came, I'd be waiting. But Lisa? Lisa was nothing to me now. As I stepped out of the courthouse, she suddenly called my name. Jason, wait. I turned slowly, arms crossed. She hesitated, as if she didn't know what to say. Then, finally she whispered, Do you think we'll ever be able to talk again? I tilted my head, studying her. The woman I had loved once was gone. In her place was someone I didn't even recognize. I took a deep breath and gave her my final answer. No, I didn't say another word. I walked away and I never looked back. With Lisa and Ben out of my life, I had nothing tying me down anymore. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I left town. I packed up everything I needed, bought myself a new car, a sleek, jet black convertible that had nothing to do with practicality and everything to do with freedom, and I hit the road. For months, I drove. Through the deserts of Arizona, along the California coastline, through the winding roads of the Rocky Mountains. And with every mile I put between myself and my old life, I felt lighter. It was like I'd been living in a prison without walls, and I had finally broken free. I had been a husband, a father, a businessman, a man with responsibilities and obligations. Now, I was just a man on the road, no destination, no one to answer to. And it felt damn good. One night, as I sat at a roadside diner somewhere in Nevada, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I hesitated before opening it. Dad, I miss you. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. Emily. I hadn't heard from her since the divorce. Lisa had made sure of that. And yet, here she was reaching out. I ran a hand over my face, exhaling slowly. I wanted to call her immediately to tell her I missed her too. But I knew better. She had reached out in secret, which meant she wasn't ready yet. So I kept it simple. I miss you too, kiddo. I'm always here when you're ready. I hit send. And for the first time since this all started, I let myself hope. As the miles stretched ahead of me, I thought about everything I had been through, the betrayal, the lies, the heartache. And I realized something: life doesn't stop for anyone. I had spent years giving everything to people who never truly valued me. I had put love and loyalty above my own self-respect. And in the end, I was left with nothing but the truth, harsh, painful, and undeniable. But maybe that was enough, because that truth taught me lessons I'll carry for the rest of my life. Not everyone who smiles at you is your friend. Some people are only in your life for what they can take. If they show you their true colors, believe them the first time. Love is not just about feelings, it's about respect. If someone lies to you, betrays you, and expects you to stay, they don't love you. They love controlling you. Sometimes, walking away isn't giving up, it's choosing yourself. And that's not selfish. It's survival. If I could go back, I wouldn't change a thing. Because now, I know my worth. And if there's one thing I want others to remember, it's this. You're never too old to start over. Because I did. And I never look back.